Remember? Donald Trump pulled from the UN Human Rights Council and trashed it. This was done under the banner of the United States. Do you guys know why they did that? They did that because they was upset because the UN Human Rights Council was calling out Israel for their war crimes. So then there was a headline that came out, and this last thing I'm gonna share, and I'm gonna get Zoya and Peter in here. There was a headline that came out around the time when Biden became president, where he said, and he promised this on the campaign trail as well, if I win the office of presidency, we're gonna rejoin the Human Rights Council, the UN Human Rights Council, and everybody, including the neo-progressives, who we continue to call out, they praised Biden for this. See, this is why we should have Biden, the return of normalcy, a cool head in the office over Donald Trump, because he's willing to respect human rights. He want to get back to the UN Human Rights Council. And you want to know what's very interesting about that? And I covered this at the time. Yeah, I'm gonna show you guys my tweet. You guys know why Biden rejoined the UN Human Rights Council? Him and Anthony Blinken was very open about this. Listen to this part. As the United States re-engages, we urge the Human Rights Council to look at how it conducts its business. That includes a disproportionate focus on Israel. So you guys realize Trump got a ton of heat for pulling out of the UN Human Rights Council because and he cited how they treated Israel as the reason why he did that. Then Biden was like, no, that's not the right response. We did get back in the UN Human Rights Council. So the UN returned to the rights body. Look at this article. This is from Reuters. To shield Israel. So they agreed with Trump. They just thought Trump had the wrong strategy.
What's popping? My friends and family, we are back. Hope you guys enjoyed your holiday weekend. Welcome back to RBN Tuesday Live. We have another banger in store for you guys. We have Danny Shaw joining us on top of the hour. And you guys see here, this is maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago. I did a segment looking much younger, much fresher. This is before this profession aged me significantly. I was covering the corruption between Biden, Israel, and how they've been undermining international law even before October 7th, because I cannot emphasize enough, this is before October 7th. Before this entire genocide, you had probes investigating Israeli war crimes. And we're going to cover this story later because this completely contradicts the entire idea that the conflict started on October 7th. Because Zionists and Israel supporters, they will say, well, we are allowed to slaughter civilians, commit massacres and people hiding in tents, violate international law because this is a war that Hamas and the Palestinians started. Well, that is completely contradicted when you realize that the ICC have been probing into Israeli war crimes since 2021. I covered that. I covered how the Biden administration infiltrated the UN and these human rights organizations in order to protect and shield Israel, as I just covered in the clip I showed you in the intro video. So the sweet summer children, they are surprised that Biden is handling Gaza the way he has. They simply are the people who wasn't paying attention. You had Biden that openly said that we are joining the UN Human Rights Council to shield and protect Israel. And that is literally exactly what they did. And guys, these are things that they were saying on the lead up of the election that they was going to do. You guys see how Biden and liberals, they are the more competent side of the establishment? You had Trump and them, they just pulled out altogether. They're like, man, this is ridiculous. You guys are so unfair to Israel. Let's pull out. The liberals like, bro, what? That's not how we handle this. What we do is we infiltrate and we manipulate the ICC, as I showed there. You see how the liberal side, they're more competent. And now you have this slaughter in Rafah. And this is why I was telling people not to get too excited with these ICJ and ICCs. Because the people who are pacifists, the people who usually condemn Palestinian resistance, they always overblew what the ICC and ICJ was doing. And I will say overall it's a good thing to have these diplomatic victories. But my response was that the ICC, the ICJ, they're not saving Palestinians right now. What enforcement mechanisms do they have to stop the genocidal state of Israel? We're seeing international law fail the Palestinians on a mass scale. My first reaction when I heard the ICC charge was like, okay, how are we going to stop the genocide of Palestinian people right now? And then you had the International Court of Justice that sent an order out so Israel would not continue their offensive and slaughter Palestinians in Rafah. So what do they do in response? Israel bombs Rafah 60 times in 2 days after receiving that court order. So this is something that I mentioned because we are talking about how to actually prevent the genocide. And people who was trying to pretend that the ICJ and ICC is mechanisms to save Palestinians got it all wrong. That's why there was people in Gaza that was not celebrating when the ICC and the ICJ ruled, because they're like, all right, we're still fucked though. We're still screwed. And we are seeing it on the mass level because of U.S. veto power. How international law fails us. We have a rogue bad actor that is sponsored and supported by the largest, most violent empire in human history. How international law, which, as I said before, international law itself is on trial as much as Israel is. And the ICJ and the ICC and the international institutions, their inability to prevent such a thing from happening shows that we shouldn't rely on them. It shows the failure. You even have senior officials that openly admit that the ICC was meant to go after Africa, the thugs in Africa and Putin. Now, once again, there is nuance in all these arguments because obviously it's much preferred to have these rulings and ICC and ICJ go after them. But this is why the professional managerial class, the people on the right in the Palestinian movements who are revolutionary Palestinian brothers and sisters called out, the centrist wing of the Palestinian resistance, the people who condemn Hamas. They condemn Hamas, they condemn Hezbollah, they condemn Ansarullah. Even the worst among them, I won't pretend that it's a significant amount of them, but the worst among them, I'm talking about like the progressives, like Bernie Sanders and them, they would condemn BDS, even boycotting. They say, oh, we can't boycott Israel. That's a form of anti-Semitism. There's centrist wing of the Palestinian resistance movement that are there to keep their eyes on the radical revolutionary side that actually want to engage against our colonial oppressors. This is what our friends at the Palestinian Community Network explained to us. They said they are as upset. I had a Palestinian roundtable that I hosted a few weeks ago because once again, it's my job as a citizen journalist to talk to those people and explain to you guys the material reality that we are living under. That's my job as a citizen journalist. And when you talk to the revolutionary Palestinians, there's so much frustration with the centrist wing of the Palestinian resistance who condemn Palestinian resistance because they have this delusion They are delusional in thinking that the institutions that was established today are designed to resist Israeli apartheid. And let me repeat that. The reason why you see the professional managerial class and the Palestinian centrists on, once again, I like these people. They are on the good side. They are on the right side of this issue, but they condemn boycott sometimes. They condemn Hamas because they view the current institutional powers at play as enough to resist the apartheid genocidal state of Israel, which is what Hamas and what I am saying, what many Palestinian resistance fighters acknowledge as not being sufficient. The same way that the institutions that was being upheld during the civil rights movement was not sufficient. We needed mass protests, and we needed an armed wing of the civil rights movement that a lot of white Americans like to forget exists. Because what happened to this red line? Biden warns Netanyahu an assault on Rafah will cross red line. Now you have Israel that burned children alive. And now you guys see, the only thing I can really show you guys is mainstream media headlines. I can't even begin to show you guys the absolutely horrific images that I've been purposely avoiding as well for my mental health, because it's literally the most disgusting, horrific thing you will ever see. What Israel just did in Rafah, murdering dozens of innocent civilians. In the narrative, they claim they got 2 Hamas resistance fighters. So in order to get 2 Hamas resistance fighters, they was willing to burn children alive. And apparently, I don't have details on this, there was another tent massacre that I saw reported a few hours ago. As we speak right now, there are tent massacres going on as Israel bombards and destroys Rafah under the false guise that they're going after Hamas. They are not going after Hamas. For one, there is no evidence that 2 Hamas resistance fighters was killed in this strike. Because as I explained before, what Israel and the United States do, they take any military-aged men, which starts at the age of around 12 for Palestinians. So I guess when they say 2 Hamas militants was murdered, that's essentially we killed 2 men over 2 boys over the age of 12, maybe some men over the age of 21 that was involved. Because once again, I cannot stress enough, there is never any evidence of the Israeli claims that they went after and killed Hamas. And now the images that we're seeing, which I can't show you guys, which you guys probably shouldn't see, they're being spread all over the world. And now there's even suggestions, and I'm kind of at the point right now where I believe it when I see it. I believe it when I see it, because now you have the EU floating sanctions on Israel. Let me pull this one up as well. I show Politico. EU foreign ministers discuss sanctions against Israel. For the first time at an EU meeting, in a real way, I've seen significant discussions on sanctions. And this is what the Irish foreign minister is talking about, because this is in direct response to Israel ignoring an ICJ court order forbidding them to go into Rafah. So after they was forbidden to go into Rafah by court order, you then had Israel that say, oh no, we're going to do it anyway because international law is not real. And for the people that's saying that Biden has nothing to do with this, they couldn't be more incorrect. The most bad faith people in the world are often the progressives, the media signs, all these people that say, oh man, come on, what can Biden really do? There are a lot of these people that say, oh man, what can Biden really do about this? I've seen this is a big narrative that's coming out. So when the Biden administration comes out and they speak out against the ICJ, that is Biden giving Israel permission to ignore the ICJ's order on not invading Rafah. So Joe Biden is directly complicit with this, my friends. So Biden, Blinken, and the Biden State Department immediately after the ICJ, after the ICC put out their arrest warrants, after the ICJ warned Israel, they said they don't have jurisdiction over Israel. That is what the Biden administration rushed out to say. So when saying that, that gave the permission structure, that was the Biden administration giving a wink and a nod to Israel to engage in activity into Rafah. Dumbasses in the corporate media, they will never their narrative, which is done on purpose because they're not really that dumb. They're spinning what Netanyahu's doing as tanking the Biden administration.
Our top story this.
So I'm gonna show you guys this segment here. I'm gonna try to get into this as much as I can before our guests get here, because this strike into Rafah with EU talking about sanctions, because they are avoiding this. They are trying to talk about the Trump trials and all this in Western media. I've been analyzing a lot of the reactions here, but trust me, this is being blasted everywhere throughout the world. I saw a speech with Lula. Let me see if I can find it because I didn't save it. We have Lula saying that, man, we got to do something about the genocide in Gaza, because if we don't, we're next. So here's our friends and sisters, our brothers and sisters at Hotspot. You know, they always provide. Here's Lula. If we stay silent on genocide, we're next. Israel keeps killing women and children. We can't remain silent. We can't fail to be supportive, because tomorrow we'll need that solidarity. And guys, there's the international community is horrified about what they're seeing. We are in a unique bubble. We're gonna see how the West is trying to cope with this. That is not the reality the rest of the world is going through right now. In fact, I saw Man City. You guys know I'm a big fan of European soccer. My brother, he's a big fan of Manchester City, and their coach declined. Let me see if I can find it. I didn't have to save. Actually, I think this is important to make my point. Manchester City, Israel. Because Israel is about to become the pariah. They already was, but it's about to be even worse. Damn it, I can't find it. Where the Manchester City ignored the Israeli representative. Oh well, fuck. I might find it as I let this next segment play. The Israel and Zionists, like, bro, the way they're playing this is unbelievable. This slaughter that we've seen in Rafah, the world is not going to forgive this. So let's see how Morning Joe and these unhinged Zionists, how coping with this. Let's dive into this because there's a lot to say.
Hour, Israel is facing widespread international condemnation for striking a tent camp that was housing displaced Palestinians in Rafah. According to the Gaza Health Ministry, at least 45 people were killed in Sunday's airstrike. That was the deadliest incident in southern Gaza City since Israel began its offensive there earlier this month. The IDF claims 2 Hamas militants were killed in the attack, and that many measures were taken beforehand to minimize harm to civilians.
That's them reading pure IDF propaganda, by the way. Why are they even repeating the Israeli claim that they're here to be careful, we killed Hamas militants? That's them directly reading IDF propaganda, but let's continue.
Now, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is calling the strike a tragic incident. He made the comment while addressing Parliament yesterday, saying there will be an investigation. Meanwhile, 2 U.S. officials tell Axios the Biden administration is looking into whether the attack violates the president's red line. Earlier this month, Biden threatened to suspend the delivery of some weapons if Israel entered population centers in Rafah.
Obviously, there has been this conflict. I do think it is important for us to note here that, again, we've talked about the United States and the kill ratio of enemy combatants to civilians. And you certainly could look at us and any other major country that's fought wars, and you'd be hard pressed to say that Israel has a higher rate of civilian casualties.
Bro, why do they keep making this argument like this is a good argument? My brother, actually, you're not my brother. What they're saying is man, if you look at how many people that we killed, if you look at how ineffective our military is, can we really judge Israel? Bro, they keep making this argument, and it is not the banger that they think it is. Come on, man, we evil as shit, man. We done so many war crimes. We can't judge Israel. Who's we, for one? Secondly, the fact that Israel in this campaign, you guys know they killed more children in this conflict than all war zones over the last 5 years combined. This thing that they're doing where they're pretending this is a normal war, this is not normal at all. This is Cambodia level of indiscriminate bombing. We are seeing historic level of slaughter. And then what Joe Scarborough and what Zionist neocons, what they're saying is through the historical slaughter and through this heinous genocide where Israel is violating international law, we don't have the moral high ground over them. What does that say about the United States, my friends? And what does it say about your values that you don't condemn this reality, in fact? Zionists say, oh, man, you guys see that you dropped nuclear bombs after Pearl Harbor. After 9/11, you guys set up torture camps. This is not the argument you guys think it is. You guys are essentially admitting the claim that I keep making, that the United States and Israel are the current and modern axis of evil, committing crimes on the scale that no one can compete with. That's why it's absurd to live in this violent empire and spend your time condemning Xi Jinping and Putin. Putin kill count is child's play compared to Netanyahu. Putin's kill count, even with the Ukraine war, it's child's play compared to Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, Madeleine Albright. I'm not saying these places and these governments are perfect, but the United States and Israel has the moral high ground over nobody, as admitted by Joe Scarborough here during this unhinged. I don't know the point he's even trying to make here. This is the moment where I decide I'm going to cover this because I want to play his point in full. And this is not the banger he thinks it is.
For us to know.
It's almost like he's trying to prove our point. So I'm going to let this play again. I want to emphasize this point because this is him proving every single RBN segment right with what he's saying here. And they are so brainwashed, they don't even realize how what they're saying and how insane this is.
This conflict, I do think it is important for us to note here that, again, we've talked about the United States and the kill ratio of enemy combatants to civilians. And you certainly could look at us and any other major country that's fought wars, and you'd be hard pressed to say that Israel has a higher rate of civilian casualties to enemy combatants than the United States. And I remember back that Peter Baker, drone strikes going after al-Qaeda time and again, whether it was killing most of Zawahiri's family while he escaped, whether it was killing Americans in drones.
Bro, this guy who worships the military is just acknowledging casually to his audience that we've been targeting and killing civilians, and including American citizens. How does this not change your entire worldview after knowing this stuff? Like, just casually acknowledging, like, yeah, man, our military, man, if you look at us, we kill people all the time. We do all the crazy stuff. Why are we judging Israel? This is an insane argument for someone to make who consider themselves who love and acknowledge and worship the United States and their military. It's insane. Let's continue.
Baker, drone strikes going after al-Qaeda time and again, whether it was killing most of Zawahiri's family while he escaped, whether it was killing Americans in drone strikes, certainly not justifying what's going on in Rafah. And yes, I understand there is a red line there. I'm just making sure we're not hypocritical, suggesting that somehow what Israel is doing in warfare is different than what every other country does in warfare.
No, sir. No, sir. No, sir. No, sir. You're not allowed to do this. Why are you using we? We're not the one making policy. We're the ones who are captured, and we are the ones who are forced to pay for this empire. We are the one who's been critical of these policies that you're talking about. So don't throw us into bin like you guys. He's like, how can we talk about how genocidal the Israeli people? No, what do you mean? This is what we've been calling out for day one. This is what we've been calling out from day one. And the fact that Israeli and United States war crime are unique. He's like, oh, come on, man. We don't want to sound hypocritical because, I'm a war criminal. I support war criminals. You support war criminals. We all support war criminals. Yes, you are hypocritical. We are not. We are the true patriots because we want to make sure our country is not a hypocritical garbage nation that supports terrorism. And that's where these people's ideology is completely destroyed because they view people who protest against our state as unpatriotic. No, we're the patriotic ones who are trying to set our nation correct. You okay with our country being filled with child murderers, with violently hypocritical criminals? Oh, Jesus Christ, let's continue this. This is ridiculous.
And Rafah, and I understand there is a red line there. I am just making sure we're not hypocritical, suggesting that somehow what Israel is doing in warfare is different than what every other country does in warfare. That said, this obviously has to amp up tensions between Joe Biden.
Right, sorry, just one more interruption. I just want to say, and I bring this up all the time, more children was killed in Israel's operation in like the first week than all the children combined in the Ukraine conflict. So he's trying to say that, oh, well, Israel fight war no differently than any other country. The country that you guys say you guys said that Russia was genocidal. You guys said that Putin was a unique criminal for what he did in Ukraine. Meanwhile, the amount of civilians and children that he's killed is completely dwarfed by Israel. It's not even a comparison. What Russia is doing to Ukraine is a glorified pickle contest compared to what the slaughter Israel is doing to the Palestinians.
And Benjamin Netanyahu, does it not?
Yeah, it certainly does, obviously. And it doesn't come at a good time for Prime Minister Netanyahu, who's certainly not going to convince the International Court, which is considering whether to issue arrest warrants for war crimes, that Israel is, in fact, exercising restraint in the way that the International Court would like it to do. And
What? That was a word salad if I ever heard one. He's like, man, this is not convenient for Israel, who's under investigation for international court. What do you mean it's not convenient for Israel? You mean it's not convenient that they committed war crimes while they're under investigation for committing war crimes? Yes, that's kind of inconvenient. It's kind of inconvenient for your Zionism and your support of Israel, for Israel to commit war crimes when they're under investigation. Yeah, that's kind of inconvenient. If I was under investigations for stealing Skittles, and then I stole some Reese's, yeah, that's kind of inconvenient for my case that I'm not a fucking thief.
the Biden administration would like it to do. Now, for the Biden administration, for President Biden, the red line that he has laid down has been kind of fuzzy. We haven't really seen exactly what he means by that. What he said in general is that they don't—
Kind of fuzzy, he said. Just kind of fuzzy.
want the Israelis to go into Rafah in a big way that would cause inordinate civilian casualties and that would keep aid from flowing to people who need it. They have said so far, up until now, that the limited strikes in Rafah have not crossed that line, that Israel has, in fact, been more restrained in the way it has approached Rafah than it had originally intended to.
They are literally burning children alive, as seen on the image on the left here. Meanwhile, the Biden administration, being reported on MSNBC as fact, is saying that Israel is being restrained. And by the way, there's another massacre that just happened that we get information about. They're committing massacres so fast we can't even keep up with it. Meanwhile, they're talking about, oh man, Israel is going into this refugee camp and burning children alive in a very cautious way. That's what they're saying.
flag that it would. And most civilians, in fact, have left Rafah. There had been more than 1 million people taking refuge there. The belief is that the majority of those have, in fact, left at this point. But obviously, this attack on a tent of mostly civilian people, 45 dead, is the kind of thing that President Biden was talking about, the kind of thing he wanted to avoid. And whether or not Prime Minister Netanyahu—
No, it's not. That is Israeli and Biden propaganda, U.S. propaganda. How can you say that Biden and Israel wanted to avoid a massacre of refugees in a refugee camp that you ordered an attack on? That does not make sense. So when the reason why the ICJ ruled that Israel cannot go into Rafah, the reason why everyone warned that Israel can't go into Rafah is because that will lead to mass slaughter of civilians. So you can't say, oh, we're going to have a tactical military operation into this refugee camp, and then when refugees die, oh, come on, man, we didn't expect that to happen. They're saying stuff to us that inherently makes zero sense. But this is the mass genocidal psychosis and the abuse the American people are forced to put up with the amount that we are gaslighted, with the insanity that we are spoon-fed.
Netanyahu sees, has a second thoughts as a result of this. We don't know, but it's terrible timing in terms of figuring out what the American position is going to be on this sort of, limited Rafah incursion that we've seen so far. It's not limited to the people who are in that tent.
Jonathan Lemire, the images coming out of this camp are truly horrifying. Women, children, civilians, refugees, frankly, some of them incinerated in this attack. If this doesn't cross the red line, I guess the question could be asked by some, what does the red line mean? Is there really a red line? And if it in fact has been crossed in this case or will be crossed at some point in the future, what does that mean in terms of the United States' willingness to support Israel or to withdraw some of its support? What is that red line at this point?
Yeah, it has been, to Peter's point, pretty vague. And you'll recall when the president issued this warning about a red line a few weeks ago, it was about a full-on military operation in Rafah. That still hasn't happened yet.
What are you talking about? Just absurd propaganda. And I see my guest here. I'm going to introduce Danny here whenever he's ready here. Just insane propaganda saying there's no military action. So how did the refugees get murdered then? Just outright lying, saying there's no military operation. You have the Atlantic outright justifying the murdering of children. Here, look, you guys see how they're just outright reading a script? They're just reading a script sent by the IDF. There's no critical thinking here. Oh, technically, there's no military operation in this area that was killed by a military strike. And now look at how the BBC covered it, where they're essentially being held at gunpoint by the IDF and was told to read a script. This is what is considered free media in the West.
It's Monday, the 27th of May. Our main story, the Hamas-run health ministry in Gaza says 35 people have been killed and dozens injured in an explosion at a refugee camp near Rafah.
The Israel Defense Force said it had carried out an airstrike targeting a compound where senior Hamas officials had gathered. It said it is now reviewing the incident after reports that civilians had also been harmed.
Civilians been harmed? You mean the dozens that was killed? The Hamas-led health industry. The IDF claims that was going after. There's no reason to listen to what anything Israel said. And Danny, give me a thumbs up whenever you're ready. I can introduce you here very soon. There's no reason to get an IDF any reason. I think we have connection issues. Yeah, I think we have an issue with Danny. So I'm gonna bring my guest in here very soon. Fortunately, hopefully we can go back in. I saw he disconnected a few times. But I still got plenty to show you guys because the media covering this is literally psychopathic. I can continue with the Morning Joe statement, but I'm gonna show you guys a few more. This is the Atlantic. This is the Atlantic that is literally justifying the murder of children. Because obviously I can't show you that much on YouTube, but you guys have, if you're on social media, you guys seen the horrific images. A lot of them I've been purposely trying to avoid. If you want to ruin your day, to search Rafah, for example. Look at this, what was printed in the Atlantic. Even when conducted legally, war is ugly. And Dan, I see we were back. Danny, give me a thumbs up whenever you're ready. I know we're having probably some tech issues here. But he said it is possible. I want to break you in here very soon, Danny. The Atlantic says it is possible to kill children legally if, for example, so that sentence, stop. The mass genocidal psychosis of this country cannot be overstated. We now have media in this country that is now saying it is possible to kill children legally. And they're using the IDF talking point that Hamas is hiding behind children. You know the children that Israel told to relocate to this area. So let me get back to this insanity. I want to properly introduce our guest. I'm sure you probably seen some of it. You've seen the coverage of the massacre, but I want to properly welcome our guest, amazing political analyst, a professor. He does great work with Midwestern Marks. Thank you for joining us on RBN, Danny Shaw. I'm glad we were able to make this happen.
Yeah, thank you, RBN, for the invitation. I was caught up in traffic trying to get home to my office, so I just pulled over off of Route 95 to make it happen in a timely way. But yeah, what's happening in Rafah right now, what's been happening now for over 7 months is truly disgusting. And it perturbs me deeply every time they mention any statistic about the horrific casualties, the genocidal casualties in Gaza. They always have to put the Hamas-run health ministry, because for the West, for the colonial West, Palestinians have never been human. They weren't human during al-Nakba in 1948 when 750,000 Palestinians were displaced from their homes, from their communities, from their homeland. And to this day, 76 long genocidal years later, they continually are subhuman in the West. So shout out to RBN for all of the conscious raising work that you all have been doing for months and months now in defense of Palestine and their right to self-determination.
Yeah, I appreciate you, Danny. It's great to have you on. That's a great summary. And that's what got me involved in citizen journalism. I'll show you guys a clip of my early days. You guys see my old setup. This was always one of my main issues. Like, because the genocidal tendencies of Israel was obvious. This end game was obvious from the jump. It was obvious how little the West cared about the lives of Palestinians. And that's why you have the way, and I'm going to show you guys some example of the way that Palestinians are being dehumanized. Even now, I'm going to show you guys this statement from AIPAC, for example. Talk about how in the response to this slaughter that we've seen in Rafah, AIPAC says, the images coming out of Rafah tonight are horrific. It's a terrible tragedy as a result of Hamas' evil strategy of hiding its leadership, fighters, and weapons amid and beneath Palestinian civilians. Hamas started this war by showcasing its disregard for Israeli lives. Now, let me start there. There's a reason why I was covering this from day one. You guys know the ICC had investigations into Israeli war crimes, into Palestinians, and that inquiry started in 2021. So that since they had war crimes inquiries in the ICC over Israel that dated back years, that alone is shows the absurd logic that somehow Hamas started this war on October 7th. Because, like you said, this is I would say that October 7th was in response to Israel's longtime genocidal policies. But before we continue on with the rest of the topic, one thing I want to do, like I'll do usually whenever I have guests on for the first time, is do proper introductions. Dan, I want you to introduce yourself, like how you got involved with Midwestern Marks, your kind of ideology in general. And I was told that, and I heard about how you was retaliated against by Zionists because of your position over Palestine. You can talk about that as well if you want. But before we continue, I want to give you a proper introduction. So our audience know about your work. If you want to take that on, Danny.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, first off, October 7th was Nat Turner with the burner. October 7th was anti-colonial, to put it into 3 words, anti-colonial resistance. And those who decontextualize like AIPAC, that's because they come from a settler, racist, colonial ideology. And what's truly disturbing is how many people here in the United States are so confused. And that's why I just got back from Detroit and Dearborn. We had 2 different conferences out in Michigan. Dearborn is the epicenter of Arab migration here to the United States. We understand, to quote Manny Ness's new book, that migration is a byproduct of imperialism. So that's what makes Dearborn Dearborn. And here in New York City, we have Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, which is also another Palestinian diaspora epicenter. So, yeah, I've been in the movement for 3 decades now. My mother, who's sitting right next to me, want to say hi, Mom?
Hi.
Hey, how you
My
doing?
mom's the one who, my mother raised me as an anti-imperialist. So, from the time I was a teenager, I was reading books about Yasser Arafat and Leila Khaled and the PLO and all of the Palestinian resistance. So as you said, like on October 7th, back in October, it was very clear what Zionism and U.S. capitalism, because Zionism is nothing without their colonizing backers. And that's what all of this rhetoric and ideological confusion is about. When they try to conflate anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism, that reflects the needs of imperialism in the Middle East and why imperialism has chosen to weaponize the true history of Zionism, the true history of Jewish working class resistance, and the true history of Palestine. So as a professor for 18 years at John Jay College, I did everything to educate my students on how the struggle for Puerto Rican independence is connected to Palestine, and how the struggle of the Cuban people against this 65-year blockade is connected to Palestine, and how the struggle right now in Haiti. I was in Haiti a few months back. I returned in early February. I have a long relationship with the Haitian resistance, and that resistance right now is the U.S. carries out its 4th colonial invasion and occupation is connected to Palestinian resistance. So as a professor of international affairs and as a professor of Latin American and Caribbean studies, I never forgot about Palestine, because Palestine is a lightning rod, not just in the Arab world, but wherever there's resistance around the world. And for this reason, 6 weeks ago, I was fired after 18 years at John Jay College. The reasons they gave were my quote unquote language about Israel. And they continue to try to conflate the anti-Zionist struggle with anti-Semitism. That is a deep colonial lie. It's a genocidal lie. So we went out there to Dearborn with our close comrades from Infrared, Midwestern Marx, in Jackson Hinkle for a conference this past Friday. And then in Detroit, we had the National People's Palestine Conference as well. So 2 important events, which from my standpoint, I wouldn't see them as in contradiction necessarily. I would see these 2 different events as perhaps targeting different swaths of the U.S. Working class. And I think both events were successful. And I think we need maximum unity right now as this genocide stampedes forward with full support of Genocide Joe and potentially Trump if he's reelected on November 5th. The principal primary contradiction facing humanity is this genocide of a native people in Palestine. So for me, we can figure out all the different ideologies and differences, but for right now, I think unity has to be our watchword: anti-colonial unity, anti-Zionist, and anti-capitalist unity.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's my main priority, especially after everything we've seen. My especially after seeing the tent slaughters in Rafah, like our number one priority right now should be the destruction of Zionism, because it's through the destruction of Zionism that a giant part of the empire will then be dismantled. So right now, I think we should be all hands on deck in a unified coalition against Zionism itself, especially after their crimes that they committed. And one thing I mentioned, I want to bring there are a lot that you mentioned there regarding the retaliation, and this is a part of a long term fascist plan to essentially make it illegal to dissent against Israel, where college campuses was forced to adopt the government's definition of anti-Semitism, where essentially anti-Semitism is criticism of Israel's foreign policy. That's where they had these trial. They still doing these like congressional hearings when they bringing these professors, these CEOs, these presidents of these universities, and they get them to pledge to not only go after students but professors for questioning the Israeli project, and that's where they got you from. And I want people to understand like this coordination between the government, our institutions, the capitalist class, like the capitalist class who funded those the counter protesters to the pro-Palestinian protests. Like when you see the merging of the capitalist class, the government institutions and government action themselves with educational institutions, the merging all this is what you see as the main driver of fascism. Right now, you're seeing people lose their jobs. The capitalist coordination with the Zionist project is something that people must focus on, and you've been a victim of that.
Yeah, that's very eloquently stated. And as Marxists, as students of socialism, it's important to understand the economic base always dictates the superstructure or the ideology, the dominant ideology in a society. We can go back to 1848 and Marx's classic formulation that the ruling ideology in every epoch are the ideas of the ruling class. So they try to dress it all up in this religious stuff, and this has nothing to do with Judaism. This has nothing to do with a history of Western civilization failing our Jewish sisters and brothers. Because after all of the pogroms and the Holocaust, that was Western civilization. That was Germany and France and England and Tsarist Russia failing our Jewish sisters and brothers. But they have resorted to this Zionist ideology because they could see back in 1917 with Lord Balfour and his declaration that the quote unquote Arab world was the center for gas and oil production. So the forward thinking British imperialists and later on the US imperialists saw that if they could stick quote unquote Western gunboat smack dab dead in the middle of the Middle East, this would bring enormous profits and geopolitical advantages to them in the future. So that's what Zionism is. Zionism has nothing to do with religion and everything to do with colonialism, the ongoing colonization of the Middle East. The United States has destroyed Iraq. The US, through their Saudi proxy war, has destroyed Yemen. They have a 45-year war on the sovereignty of Iran. Look what they've done to Libya in 2011, NATO and the US. Look at the dirty war on Syria. Look at the ongoing war on Lebanese sovereignty. And all we ever hear in our echo chambers in the West is that the Palestinians are the bad guys and the Lebanese are the terrorists and Hezbollah this and that. And we got to go back to Dr. King and what Dr. Martin Luther King taught us at his famous Riverside address here in New York City. The greatest purveyor of violence in the entire world is our very own government. So, you know, maximum props to RBN for the work that you all have consistently been doing. Now, in terms of Zionism and their attack on our civil liberties, they've exposed how much hypocrisy exists here in the United States, because if the Constitution is supposed to protect our First Amendment rights, how come a professor like myself was fired? and many of my colleagues, all of whom our crime was an anti-colonial crime. We dared to stand up to power and speak the truth about this genocide and the 76 years of genocide. And that's the only reason they've ever given for firing us. Shailene Rodriguez was fired from NYU. My colleague, Professor Tomek, was fired from NYU and Hunter College. Another professor, colleague of mine, Lisa Hoffman Cordota, was fired from Hunter. And all of these students, how many students have been arrested, have been brutalized, have been suspended? How many graduations have been canceled? I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. Everything to protect this colonial, racist, settler ideology. And shout out to all the students from my alma mater, Columbia University. Shout out to UCLA, where the Zionist mobs were particularly brutal. They made their first arrest today. It took them damn near almost a month. I mean, imagine if that was us. Imagine if we were attacking. I mean, Zionists are never peaceful, so I can't say they'd be peaceful, but in some hypothetical scenario, if it was us, from Midwestern Marks and other revolutionary organizations going and attacking students at UCLA and University of California, Irvine and Brown University and across the country, I mean, we'd be locked up within 5 minutes and brutalized, if not murdered. So it's amazing, like Malcolm taught us, this system relies not on democracy, but on hypocrisy.
Yeah, the cops was literally helping them assault protesters, and I covered this out. The cops were literally standing there as the UCLA protesters were being assaulted by the Zionists paid for counter protesters. It was funny that the mainstream media was talking about, oh my God, where are these pro-Palestinian protesters being funded? As you have literally Zionist Catholics. You literally had Steinfeld's wife that was funding the modern age Pinkertons, these mercenaries that was here to intimidate anyone who spoke out against Israeli genocide, which is why it's hilarious that people try to pretend you're anti-Semitic if you're against the foreign policy of Israel, if you're against Zionism, because Zionism is the greatest threat to the rights of Americans, also the rights of Jewish Americans. And then the main driver of Zionism comes from people like Nikki Haley, these evangelical Christians. And now we have this insane image. I want to get your reaction to this because Nikki Haley, who is not Jewish, and I think that was probably a tech issue there. So I'll just explain what's happening here. Nikki Haley, who is not Jewish, by the way, an evangelical Christian, went to Israel. You have all these people who are seeking power, people of the ruling class who are forced to, here we go, Danny's back, who are forced to make these journey to Israel to prove that they are sufficiently loyal. Nikki Haley, who already proved that she's loyal to Israel, just doing extra credit here. Trump appointed her to the UN, and it was widely reported how essentially her job at the UN was just to lobby and protect Israel. That was the only thing she was doing. Now she showed up at this IDF weapons site, and she's literally autographing these bombs, which finished them. And one of the things they keep saying it's not genocidal, it's not a genocide, because in order for it to be genocide, you must have intent. As you have United States lawmakers who approve of these weapons, Zionists who approve of these weapons, who literally advocate rhetoric like saying finish them. There's a famous Telegram channel in Israel that has over 150,000 members where they post dead images of Palestinian children and then they cheer and they make fun of them. So you literally have the genocidal intent here. So Danny, what's your reaction to this insane image? Nikki Haley going on signing finish them on Israeli bombs, knowing exactly what she's doing.
Yeah, the glorification of violence against oppressed people, against colonized people. Palestine is really the underdog within all of us. These are truly horrific images of white supremacy, of U.S. militarism on steroids. And it reminds us, everyone listening, we all have a huge responsibility. In the words of Ernesto Che Guevara, he said he had the most admiration for the comrades in the belly of the beast, because we have the most gargantuan task before us, and that is breaking down this system, opposing this system, overthrowing this system from within the belly of the beast. It's not going to be easy. More and more people are joining us in the streets to say no to this whole slaughter of innocent life. How many of those bombs that the war criminal Nikki Haley and we saw Mike Pence over there signing these same genocidal weapons, and it shows you who they're truly loyal to. They're loyal to the weapons manufacturers. They're loyal to the U.S. Military-industrial complex, who even Dwight D. Eisenhower called the greatest threat to democracy within the U.S. So our responsibility is to keep reaching larger swaths of our class. That's why I think what Infrared and Jackson Hinkle are doing is unique. It's new, because there's different geographical realities in our country. You know, I'm a East Coast individual. You know, I'm in the Bronx, New York, and the way we talk out here is surely different than how they talk in certain sections of Minnesota and Michigan and in Southern Illinois. And it's only because of Midwestern marks that they were able to, you know, educate me more on what people are seeing in the Midwest. And right now we're losing the informational war. We're losing the military war. We're losing the war, the genocidal war. So I think we need, like you said, we need all anti-imperialist hands, all anti-colonial hands on deck. We have to use every strategy. And sure, there's a place for comradely, constructive critiques. I don't think one organization can do it on their own. But I've certainly been opened up as a East Coaster. You know, they break my balls a lot and tell me I'm an East Coast coastal elite, and they say that sarcastically, but it's not something I'd be familiar with because I didn't grow up, you know, in Chicago or in Cleveland or in the surrounding areas. So I'm equally horrified. You know, I wrote a book on the genocide. It's called "This Is Genocide," and then the second section is 48 poems for Gaza. Because anybody who's had their eyes open in the aftermath of October 7th could see the writing on the wall, that this was a genocide in motion. And those of us who are students of Israeli sociology, which is Zionist sociology, for 76 years, they've been teaching Israeli school children that they're superior to Palestinians. No different than Jim Crow Alabama and Mississippi. No different than the Dominican ruling class and how they teach that Haitians are inferior. So Zionism is an exclusionary, exterminationist, colonial ideology. It has to be destroyed. And when I say that the Zionists are the KKK of the Holy Land, that's not an exaggeration. That's rooted in sociological and historical fact. And then the House of Representatives comes and passes a law that we can't critique Zionism. And again, I bring you back to the needs of the U.S. ruling class in the Middle East. And that's why they're passing these ridiculous laws. To understand any law, whether it was the Rockefeller drug laws, one of the most racist laws here in New York's history, or the laws they're passing about Zionism, they completely reflect the needs of the ruling class of this country. And that's Marxism 101.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Your definition of Zionism and the way you explain it is so on point. And that's the mass mobilization we need to educate people on this Zionist Israeli project that has completely infiltrated our system, where it's like normalized for people to be retaliated against economically, like yourself, Danny, for speaking up against the Israeli project. We're even seeing in what I never seen before, where some evangelical Christians, a lot of people in white America who strongly supported the Israeli project, is starting to question it. That's why in this era right now, in this unique political situation, I think we need to be forming coalitions with these people who understand the Zionist infiltration of our system, who understand the threat that the Zionist ideology pose. Now, I want to organize this among an anti-colonial line. Not everyone is necessarily anti-colonial, but people need to understand, and there are a lot of people who have problems with the way I do things, because the biggest criticism that I still get to this day is that I like to talk to people. I guess that, oh, you had Jackson on, you had Jimmy on, you had this person on. Like, I'm from the Midwest, guys. Like, there are a lot of these coastal elites. Speaking of coastal elites, there are a lot of these coastal elites, and I noticed that the people who criticize me for talking to people who are socially conservative, who may be libertarian. Lion Cosgrove was just on the show; he's a libertarian. I noticed these people who have these like very strict guidelines on who we can talk to and who we can organize with. I always almost like look at their location as like a side project, and every time it's always New York, California, some Twitter user from New York and California condemning the red, brown, and lines. You organizing with conservative, you organizing with Midwestern Marks. And I'm like, yeah, you guys have a blue ocean. You guys are surrounded by shit libs. So, and for some reason, you guys think it's worthwhile to organize with other shit libs. But as someone who lives in the Midwest, who's someone who's surrounded by conservative and people who are socially conservative, we got to realize that we need to organize with people who got our material interest in mind, who have the threat of the empire in mind. So in general, that's my vague overall thoughts about Hinkle, Haas, and anyone else who people may have disagreements on. When you look at Marxists, when you look at communists, when you look at anti-imperialists around the world, a lot of them are socially conservative. A lot of them have beliefs that we wouldn't agree with. What a lot of people don't realize is that when you look at socialists and communists, and then I'll pass to you for your thoughts, but when you look at socialists in Brazil, for example, the one who formed the coalition to elect Lula, they are very socially conservative. They are evangelicals. There's a big evangelical wing of Lula support. When you look at in Southeast Asia, where there are a lot of communists and socialists, there are a lot of socially conservative people there. So people need to understand, in America, they have a very liberalized idea about what Marxism and what communism really is. What we need to be doing is organizing with people who share our material, share our will to improve our material conditions, who have our class, who have class solidarity with us. And solidarity means the ability to check each other. Because if we're not allowed to check each other, we're not allowed to improve each other, that is not solidarity, that's unity. So I'm for the giant coalition where we have solidarity with each other, where we're hammering things together and getting things right. There's a lot to sum up there. That's my general summation. Danny, anything you want to add on to this? And we got a few quick things we can cover. We won't be on for too much longer. We have a few more quick things we want to cover. Anything you want to add before we move on, Danny?
Yeah, I think the way you laid it out was super eloquent. And a revolutionary is always evolving. And what you just laid out, how the Midwest is socially conservative, and that's something that I couldn't have heard 7 years ago, the way I can hear you right now. And that's thanks to the Noah's class at the Midwestern Marx Institute. We have ongoing classes on Marxism, Leninism, and Noah's teaching the basics class now. And Carlos will be teaching Marxist fundamentals of philosophy coming up. I taught a course, Educate Against Genocide, beginning back in October, so that we could make plain for our class that this was a genocide in motion since October and since 1948. So it's only because I've been able to expand my horizons and follow you all and participate with Midwestern Marx that I could realize that the type of ideological formation that I've received, the training that I received since 1994 and 1995 was perhaps correct for the specific geo-ideological reality of where I'm from. But when I spent that time in the Midwest, and I just returned from the Midwest yesterday, I just came back from Dearborn, Michigan, in Detroit, I was opened up to so much. And that's what allowed me to have this, this more unified, all-encompassing view. So I'm hoping that revolutionaries here on the East Coast can continue to challenge themselves and re-synthesize and take a deeper look at how we can all work together. In terms of Lula and Lula's base, it's interesting you raised that. I was actually there in Rio de Janeiro and in Sao Paulo. I was in Brazil for Lula's victory. About almost 2 years ago. In October, it'll be 2 years. And I was at an evangelical church because Bolsonaro, the Trump of the tropics, as he was called, Bolsonaro was really able to manipulate most of the evangelical and Christian vote. And Lula understood, as a popular statesman, as a popular union leader from the 70s and 80s, that he had to go to the people. And the evangelical church has been growing like crazy because of people's alienation in the favelas of Rio and the ghettos of Sao Paulo. And the evangelical phenomenon is not just in Texas or the Midwest, it's across South America. So how do we adapt as Marxists, Leninists? We have to know how to spin on a dime at any point that we think we have it all figured out. That's the moment that we're turning our back on our class. So that day that Lula went to speak to the evangelical base in Rio de Janeiro, I covered that. I was there. And I'm constantly learning from the Lulas and the Nicolas Maduros and the Evo Moraleses and all the different revolutionaries. For me, it was an incredible honor to be mentored by the Haitian revolutionaries, the Dominican revolutionaries, the Cubans. And at Midwestern Marx, we tried to combine our responsibility to wage the class struggle wherever we are, whether that's in Southern Florida, which is a different reality than the Bronx, New York, and it's different than the West Coast. Well, there's different geopolitical realities country to country. So we should constantly be learning from one another and keep it focused on who the real enemy is. My enemy is not another tendency on the left. Despite what ideological differences might exist, I would say that's a secondary or tertiary contradiction. And I agree with you. Like Mao wrote that whole piece on liberalism. If we can't critique one another, comrade to comrade, man to man, woman to woman, then it's like the Sandinistas say, I'm going to praise you behind your back and I'm going to gossip right to your face. Because if we have differences, we can work them out in a comradely fashion.
Yeah, man, there's so many things to break down, man. We definitely gotta have you back on because I can go on tangents on so many things that you speak on. Like there's so much that I can relate to in what you were saying, especially regarding your experience in Brazil. It's like you have a wealth of experience. Big shout out to my former RBN sister, well, I still consider her my RBN sister, Josana. During the early days of RBN, I used to do these spaces on Twitter with all these indigenous Brazilians that Josana hooked me up with. Big shout out to Claudia, who led the indigenous campaign to Alves Bolsonaro. And I used to have these conversations. Josana was there. Shout out to all the OG RBN FHO supporters who's been in these spaces with us, where a lot of these people I was talking to in Brazil, they didn't even speak English. I had Josana, she was there translating for them. And this is where I would learn this stuff, where I would learn how there was like a lot of these socially conservative, black and brown socialists and communists that was against Bolsonaro. And it is true, Bolsonaro had a wide support of evangelicals, but just like many countries in South America, the split was in class. You had a giant class split. You had a giant black and white split. We had a lot of white upper class evangelical supporting the Bolsonaro. Meanwhile, a lot of poor black and brown evangelicals was supportive of Lula. The overall point is you have a lot of socially conservative people who support the policies that we as socialists and communists support. But I see a lot of people who think they're communists. These are the Twitter communists that I roll my eyes about all the time on the show, who will cancel someone over their socially conservative views. I'm more libertarian in my beliefs. I'm very open about that. I don't believe the government should be involved in these sort of things, but it should never disrupt class consciousness in my belief. But these people who spend a lot of their time criticizing and canceling people who have more socially conservative tastes, my question to them is like, will you cancel one of these like black families who are poor supportive of Lula, but they're against abortion rights? Like there's a lot of those people in Brazil. There's like these black families who are against abortion, but they're socialists. That's common. So like, where do we draw the line? Well, I need people in America to be more critically minded. Don't follow the direction of the AOCs, the DSAs. The DSA were guilty of that. That's why I divorced myself of the entirety wing of the quote unquote left. These people who put up these weird litmus tests. They was okay with Biden voters, but they put a litmus test on a social issue. I'm like, these things are not connecting with what I'm reading. Like I'm still very young. I got a lot to learn. with theory. I'm only a theory reading Marxist for about 3 years. At that time, it was even less than that. But I'm reading this stuff. I'm like, well, hold up. The stuff you guys are telling me as we supposed to be moving as soldiers does not add up with what we move. How does it make sense for us to be canceling people based on the dynamics that the red-blue game lined up with? But anyway, I'm going to a whole nother spill. Dan, I'm asking you. Once again, we can talk forever. I gotta get back to some topics. Anything else you want to add to this topic before I move on? We gotta definitely have you back on again.
Yeah, it's a juicy topic, and next time I won't be, coming from the airport trapped in traffic. We'll have more time. I can be in my office, but in my library. Yeah, I mean, if it was up to some of these quote unquote leftists on the East Coast, I think they would cancel the entire Midwest and they speak with a generalized disdain of all of Trump country. And our chief labor analyst at the Institute, Kyle Pettis, talks about how liberalism is hegemony and how, we want to throw out Trump. We want to throw out every billionaire. We throw out all the clowns. But as we throw out the clowns, we don't want to lose the meat and potatoes. We don't want to lose the burgers. And how many of our people, if we have the patience, if we have the love, we can go sit down with them and we can connect on other issues. If they come with xenophobia, we come with trade unionism. If they come with white supremacy, we come with love, and we try to get through the backwardness, because all of our people have been indoctrinated in ruling class ideology. And sitting down with one of us or learning about a show like this might be their first opportunity to challenge themselves. And it's the youth. I mean, a lot of our older folks, maybe they can't be, maybe they won't be open-minded. But you look at young people, and this is why they go after TikTok so voraciously. That's why they're afraid of TikTok, because you see higher and higher percentages, specifically of youth across the U.S., learning the truth about the access of genocide. Israel and the U.S.'s tag team on a native people. And it's also unrelenting attacks on the sovereignty of Iran and the sovereignty of Lebanon and the sovereignty of the entire Middle East and North Africa. And that's the true use of Israel and of Zionism. This is a gigantic U.S. aircraft carrier in the Middle East to do their bidding. Every single day, whenever they want, Israel bombs Syria. And what does the United Nations say? What does the International Criminal Court say? I mean, they're finally saying something, but these are worthless paper law instruments that have never done anything for the third world, for the global south, or for oppressed people.
Yeah, well said. Once again, as much as I want to rant on anything you just said there, I have to move on because there's just a few more things I want to cover because I don't want to take too much of your time. I'm gonna get back to the ICJ and I'm gonna take it from here because I also want to ask you about Kenya and what they're doing in Haiti. I wanted to cover that. I think you mentioned that before, and I have something interesting I want to show you guys where you had the Kenyan president meeting Biden, Obama, and now they're apparently about to help fight the Ansar Allah in Yemen too. So Kenya is like the biggest sellout nation to the West, the Uncle Tom nation of Africa. We're gonna cover that that'll be our next segment. We begin to wrap up. But you have the West that is feeling the pressure from the ICJ and ICC. I'll just cover it out. The ICJ was unable to stop the offensive in Rafah. But despite Israel and the West outright ignoring international law, the ruling class in our country see the threat that it is, that their barbarism is being exposed on the international scale. Because these Zionists like Mike Johnson know that the ICJ is not going to stop Israel in their campaign, but it is very devastating for them in terms of the narrative battle. And they realize they're losing the narrative battle. And when you have a fascist backed up, whenever you have these colonialists backed up, you see their thuggery. You see the true gangster behavior that they have. And it shocks me that to this day, they are still saying the quiet part out loud. Here's Mike Johnson railing against the concept of international law because they know they will be found guilty and they will be next. It's crazy they keep saying this part out loud. Let's listen, and I'll be interested in your reaction.
America should punish the ICC and put Kareem Khan back in his place. And if the ICC is allowed to threaten Israel's leaders, we know that America will be next. There is a reason that we've never endorsed the International Criminal Court, because it is a direct affront to our own sovereignty. We don't put any international body among or above American sovereignty, and Israel doesn't do that either. Congress is reviewing all of our options right now. We have some very aggressive legislation that we're going to push as quickly as possible. It will impose sanctions. And if the ICC moves forward with its absurd warrant arrest or request, this is going to be an even bigger international problem.
Now, guys, this is what a real criminal looks like. It's not Jamal hanging outside of a gas station struggling to get by. Like, when white America think about criminal, that's what they think about, the black guy in the hoodie. No, it's this guy, this nerd in glasses with a suit, that is the biggest gangster criminal in the world. Now, Dan, do you have any general reaction before we move on?
Yeah, I mean, white supremacy personified, U.S. exceptionalism personified, colonialism personified. Mike Johnson is a coward. You know, like the Marxist Mike Tyson taught us, man. Everyone is tough. Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. And Mike Johnson came. Tyson's not a real Marxist, but just wanted to get that in there. Mike Johnson.
We're both big
Mike
fans.
Came to, Mike Johnson came to Columbia University during our encampment. He wouldn't even come close to the actual encampment led by hundreds and hundreds of students. I was camped out there with other professors and alumni in full solidarity. We wanted to be the first ones arrested when they came after us. And Mike Johnson had an opportunistic press conference, within 50 yards of us, but wouldn't even come and look with his own eyes what we were all about. Because Mike Johnson is the ultimate mouthpiece for U.S. militarism, U.S. colonialism. He is a war criminal. The day will come when the everyday people of Kansas and of Iowa and of this country take power, and we'll have proletarian cells and proletarian bars to put the Mike Johnsons behind. It's only a question of time. So they sound all pompous and holier than thou now, but their day will come.
Yeah, well said. Well said. And I want to show you guys see this is the gangster Mike Johnson making these unhinged threats to sanction ICC. What does it say that a criminal court is a threat to your sovereignty? What does it say that Mike Johnson and neocons in the West is willing to throw the concept of international law? Because they support the ICC when arrest warrants were put on Putin. They support it when it's gone after Africa. They're willing to throw out the concept of international law for Israel. Now, so that's why it's crazy to me that they keep saying this quiet part out loud. And what's wild to me, because Israel and Zionism, they have dominated the ICC, and the ICC has essentially been their puppet for decades. Because this is the prosecutor that everyone's pretending, well, I won't say everyone, the Zionists, which are the minority, the global majority are against Zionism. I just got to emphasize that. You have Zionists in the Western media pretend that this is a rogue prosecutor that's supporting Hamas. And just like Claudine Gay, these people that are in the institutions that are going after Israel are far from radicals, are far from Midwestern Marx level radicals, far from RBN level radicals. These are people that are just doing their jobs in right institutions. But even within those right institutions, they're like, hey, come on, man, this Zionism shit's too far. Like Claudine Gay, who criticized Palestinian protesters, but she was publicly lynched for essentially saying that we got to support the freedom of speech. Now, here's the top ICC prosecutor that essentially buys into the bullshit of Zionism. This is the person that they are melting down about. Now, and it's not even a criticism of him. I'm just showing you guys how unhinged Zionists are. That they're pretending that he's an agent of Hamas. Top ICC prosecutor says claim that he's equating Israel to Hamas is nonsense. So that's him saying, oh, no, I don't think you guys are worse than Hamas. I'm just doing my job. Look, Kareem Khan's tells the Sunday Times that Israel has the right to protect itself and its civilians, but not to commit war crimes or crimes against humanity. Once again, a very rational position that is actually pro-Zionist, because like China said, like Russia said, and what I believe, a hostile colonial genocidal power does not have the quote-unquote right to defend itself against the people that they are colonizing. And now the last part I'll show, and I want to get your thoughts on this, so you guys know I'm not overreacting. Look, this is the prosecutor. They're saying that's secretly Hamas. He says in the interview, I am not saying that Israel with its democracy and its Supreme Court is akin to Hamas. Of course not. Sir, are you serious? So this is him accepting the premise that Israel is a democracy and apartheid states are inherently not democracy. And this is him also saying that, well, of course, Israel's not as bad as Hamas. And during my coverage, I said Israel will be blessed to be compared to Hamas. Now, this is not a criticism of the prosecutor. The overall point I am making, and I cannot emphasize this enough, is that the ICC and the institutions couldn't be more friendly and accommodating to Israeli talking point. And they are still threatened. So do you have any thoughts, Danny, before I move on to my last few points here?
Yeah. Finally, the world is waking up to the truth about Israel. This is the antithesis of democracy. Any person who dares to speak up in defense of the people of the land will be prosecuted, will be punished in Israel. You're not allowed to fly any Palestinian flag or even mention Palestine and its true history. So Israel, not so different than other settler colonial societies like the United States, what Rhodesia was before the people of Zimbabwe and Robert Mugabe and Tongogara and all these people's generals overthrew white supremacist rule there, just as the Palestinians and the people of the Middle East will in Palestine. But it's good that humanity can finally see the truth about Israel. Of course, it's the greatest tragedy of my life. I'm 46. I've been doing this work since the mid 1990s. I've never lived through such a horrific event like these ongoing genocidal attacks against Palestine, and of course the violence in the West Bank and in all of 48 or occupied Palestine. Max Blumenthal's book, Goliath, Love and Loathing in Greater Israel, serves us as a great textbook, if you will. Some 600, 700 pages. I used it in our Midwestern Marx Institute classes to go deep into Israeli society and to get a sense of how these human beings have been dehumanized. Because when we're taught that another people is inferior and they're subhuman, we ourselves are dehumanized. When we have a steady diet of white supremacy and racism and colonialism, that dehumanizes human beings. So the Israelis can only be freed by the colonized. The colonized know their dignity, know their true worth. That's why up until their final breaths in Rafah, in Khan Yunis, in Gaza City, and in the north where there's now widespread famine. And again, like you're saying, this is not according to any radical observers or analysts like myself or yourself. This is coming straight from the UN and the ICC. Yeah. These are imperialist bodies at the end of the day. It's the imperialists that activate these bodies. So when a Samantha Power, Miss Genocide herself, says that, yes, this is a full-blown colonial famine, we should listen to them. It's the vast majority of humanity who has woken up. We see protests of hundreds of thousands in Algeria, in Nigeria, in Somalia, in Pakistan, across the West, Paris, London. There's no way Israel is going to be able to undo in any type of public relations way, even though it's very clear that CNN and MSNBC and Fox and the full gamut of mainstream outlets, the New York Post, the Daily News, the New York Times, they've been fully complicit in this genocide, and we need to keep calling them out. And that's why we say that October 7th was a definitive cleavage with what was. It was a definitive colonial breaking point for humanity. Things will never be what they were before October 7th. And again, that's why I wrote the book that the Institute published, This Is Genocide, because we're so under attack. That's why professors like myself are being fired. It's the new McCarthyism 2.0, but they can't dox all of us. They can't suspend every student. They can't suspend every graduation. So keep talking about Palestine. The more of us who speak up, the more difficult it is for them to isolate, dox, fire, and do whatever they can to those of us on the front lines.
Yeah, well said. And as we wrap up, there's one more quick topic. I want to get your thoughts about the Kenya president. So that it's gonna be a really quick segment, and I have a hotspot video on this topic coming out soon. We're going a little bit over time, so I'm gonna rely on my hotspot video to break this down, because this is following more threats in the culture of intimidation that was levied against international law on behalf of Zionism. So I have a hotspot video coming out on this very soon. But in summary, there was a war crimes inquiry that was supported by the ICC that was started in 2021. The same ICC war crimes inquiry was launched before the campaign into Gaza, my friend. Which that alone destroys the talking point that this war started on October 7th, right? So you had the lead director of the Mossad, Yossi Cohen, who was often described as the unofficial spokesperson for Netanyahu. And this story outlines how, in great detail, how he got orders from the highest up in Israel, where they was threatening the old, because she's no longer the top prosecutor now, Bensouda, the old ICC prosecutor. They was threatening her life, and they threatened the life of her family. And it came directly from Yossi Cohen, the director of the ICC. They even said, I'm gonna see if I can find the quote. Of course, they bury it in the Guardian. Where look at this quote. Look, you gotta scroll. Jesus Christ, you had to scroll all the way down here to find a quote. Look, that's like 3-4 paragraphs. Here's the quote I was looking for. I already did my hotspot video on it. That's why I knew what it was. Look. According to accounts shared with ICC officials, he is alleged to have told her, you should help us and let us take care of you. You don't want to be getting into things that could compromise your security or that of your family. Can you imagine the reaction of the West if Hamas was openly threatening court officials and their families? Now, for sake of time, because we really do got to wrap up here soon, I want to get your thoughts on this, because this is wrap up on ICC Israel trial segment. I want to get your thoughts on this, Danny. I might do a longer segment on this later, because I kind of ran low on time, because I've been covering Niger, Burkina Faso, and all these African countries that are resisting U.S. empire. You have South Africa that risking it all to take Israel to court. You have the West that's threatening economic retaliation against South Africa. So we're in an era where we are seeing the global majority, which I'm trying to call it, not just the global South, but the global majority resist the West. And then there's Kenya, who is notoriously been known, and I'm allowed to say this, I suggest our friends don't say it because it may be offensive, but they are the Uncle Toms of Africa. They always been. And now they've been such a great yes, a master nation. They're always looking at Europe and saying, yes, master, what should we do, master? Now they're getting rewarded for it. Now, I'm going to briefly go over this. I don't want to keep too much of your time, Danny. But Kenya has now been approved of non-NATO ally status. Now, here the BBC report on this. Why Kenya's non-NATO ally status is crucial for regional security. No, that's the worst thing that could possibly happen, right? You also had Ruto getting this grand welcoming in the United States. He just visited the United States. Here's him meeting Obama. And I'm trying to go through this really quickly, just for a second time. Then I won't bring you in here for your thoughts. Now, here's the president came meeting with Obama.
Good morning, Mr. President, and welcome. Didn't mean to mess up your shine there. No, yes. Please. Thank you very much. How have you been? Welcome. Welcome to Washington. Thank you very much. Hope everything's going well. Hello.
Let me make this. God damn, that audio is cringe. So, quick question: why is Obama meeting with this guy anyway? But this is and he was. Wait, go ahead. Feel free, Danny. Feel free.
No, my bad. You wanna? I can respond.
Yeah, feel free.
All right, cool. So, I first went to Haiti in 1998. I'm a product of the Dominican Republic's left, where I used to live, the Dominican Republic and Haiti, sharing islands. Because of French colonialism, because of Spanish colonialism, and all of my work and militancy and training, revolutionary training in DR, of course, brought me to Haiti in 1998. So I've been studying Haitian Creole, the national language of this country of some 12 million people. If you include the diaspora, you're talking maybe 14 million Creole, Haitian Creole speaking people in the world. So these are questions that I followed extremely closely. Black Alliance for Peace is calling the Kenyan invasion a deployment in blackface, which similar to the points that you're making. It harkens back to colonialism, when the Brits would conscript Indian troops to colonize different parts of Africa, and the French Empire would draft 4 Senegalese troops to go invade other parts of Africa. It's truly divide and conquer. We can find, to use the Haitian language, to say sellout, you say tisusu blanc. A sellout to the white man would be a tisusu blanc. And William Ruto, there could be no bigger tisusu blanc than William Ruto. So as we speak, the first Kenyan troops, the first mercenaries are arriving. These are the Zelenskys of Africa, paid off, bribed, and blackmailed to do the bidding of white supremacy, of colonialism. Extremely, extremely shameful. What the United States has been doing for over a century, but more specifically for the past few weeks, because they've been trying to get this quote unquote multinational invasion and occupation for about 2-3 years now. And it kept getting held up in the Kenyan parliament. Our comrades from Africa Stream and other organizations have been protesting in Nairobi. But the U.S. could care less about people's democracy, especially when it's in Africa. So they went forward with their 4th colonial invasion, occupation of Haiti in 100 years. So the first deployment of Kenyan troops are arriving as we speak. Again, the primary contradiction in Haiti is imperialism. Whether we're analyzing the assassination of Jovenel Moïse on July 7, 2021, I was actually on one of the last flights out of Cap Haitien to leave Haiti. That was 3 years ago now. Or whether we're talking about they talk about gangs in the West. These aren't gangs. These are paramilitary outfits. These are death squads in the streets of Port-au-Prince. They control some 80% of Port-au-Prince. I was just in Haiti up until the beginning of February. I was on the front lines. #Molegaf. Anyone who wants to learn more about Haiti, listen to the everyday Haitian people who are resisting. The main way we can support the Haitians right now is by supporting the barricades. Entire communities that still stand in Port-au-Prince live behind barricades. They have to man and woman and arm those barricades 24/7 and feed those barricades. When I say barricades, think of the Spanish Civil War. Think of the Soviets who resisted the Nazi onslaught 27 million Soviets were murdered to defeat Nazism. Of course, our U.S. history textbooks will never teach us that. But if you all look up Moleghaf, Moleghaf, you can learn a lot more about Haiti. I was doing a lot of updates through my Twitter at Prof. Danny Shaw. On October 20th, when I got doxxed, when I got all the death threats and all the threats that they were going to fire me, and ultimately they did fire me, they also took out my Twitter. It still exists, but it's shadow banned, it's deboosted, it's delisted. But I continue to try to update about Haiti. I think the most important thing an anti-imperialist can do in the West is provide a platform to the Haitian comrades who don't need anyone to speak for them. Perhaps they need translation to speak the language of the colonial center. But our sisters and brothers in the periphery, in the super exploited global South, can certainly speak for themselves. So we can go deeper in. We can get some comrades from Port-au-Prince to speak directly to RBN. Internet down there is extremely difficult. The water situation, the hunger situation, just like the Israelis are using hunger and starvation as a weapon of genocide, it's the same thing. I'll send you a video you might find interesting. I did a video in early February of this year connecting Gaza to Port-au-Prince, because the population of Gaza is roughly the population of Port-au-Prince. And who controls the water in Port-au-Prince? Who controls the internet in Gaza? Who controls who can enter or exit Port-au-Prince? Who controls who can enter or exit Gaza? So there's so many different anti-colonial overlaps. And thank you for covering Haiti on behalf of Moleghaf's leadership and the different Haitian comrades, because the Western narrative is so racist and so white supremacist, it even makes the Haitian people hate themselves. And the Haitian diaspora has learned nothing but self-hatred. Everyone should check out Rassemblement. That's a group here in Brooklyn, New York, of the Haitian youth. Rassemblement is the Haitian Creole word for gathering together to break the colonial chains. So I think we have a lot of work to do together to continue to educate the Haitian people, continue to believe in their country. They're just asking the same thing as the Palestinian people. When will colonialism and white supremacy leave us alone so we can determine our own destiny, just like Jean-Jacques Dessalines, Toussaint Louverture, the Cacos, Charmai Peralta, and the incredible heroic resistance to the 1915 and 1934 U.S. occupation, the first U.S. occupation. This will be the fourth, but the Haitian people are going to carry on in the spirit of the Cacos and continue to resist.
I can't really add much more. Well, you said they were spectacular, and this is why I'm on top of Haiti, because it's something that even many anti-imperialists and leftists in the global South, in the global majority, gets wrong. It's something that Lula got wrong. It's something that AMLO got wrong, and it's something that anti-imperialists are just now starting to correct themselves. The issue of Haiti. So it was great to hear from you on that. I don't have much to add because I appreciate your time today. I was saving this one because now you guys see why they're being so friendly with Kenya. For example, why is Kenya's president meeting with Zelensky in the first place? How is that designed to help the Kenyan people? It is not, because as you mentioned before, they were planning to use Kenya as their fodder in Haiti, and now they're even considering using Kenya as their fodder against Ansar Allah, who are engaging in actual effective resistance against the genocidal state in Israel. Listen, look at this headline here. And Danny, I'll pass it for you for final thoughts and we wrap up. Look at this here. This is why the Kenya president is being trouted around. He got the visit from Obama, met with Biden, met with Zelensky. They got their non-NATO ally status. And now they're signing Kenya up to fight Ansar Allah in Yemen. Look, why Kenya has been chosen. Oh, congratulations. You get to die for Western influence. They've been chosen to help the EU with the dangerous rebels in Yemen. You literally can't make this shit up. Danny, I'll give you last thoughts and we can wrap up. I appreciate your time. What are your reactions to this?
Yeah. I mean, truly despicable. I think you summed it up well, you know, and shout out to all of RBN, the organic intellectuals of our time. And we want RBNs on every corner, on every block, you know, across this country and across this world. So nothing but respect. And I mean, this shows how desperate empire is, to have to call upon their lackeys, on their minions, and all the words that you use that are 100% concrete and accurate. It's important not to mince our words. And, you know, there couldn't be more of a diametrical opposite to the Yemenis. I mean, the Yemenis, a lot of people might not know that Yemen just survived 8 horrific years of genocidal warfare. And when I use the word genocide, I'm not using that word lightly or as hyperbole. So for Yemen to resist the Saudi proxy U.S. War, and to now be standing against Zionism, standing against the entire colonial West. I mean, Yemen paves the way forward, and the William Rutos and these sellout Kenyan politicians are really a stain on all of humanity. And it goes back to a poem that Pablo Neruda, the Chilean revolutionary poet, something he wrote in 1973, shortly before his death. The imperialists, the U.S., will give the guns, the arms, and the Puerto Ricans will give the blood, and the Native Americans will give the blood. Now, Pablo Neruda was talking about the U.S. war of aggression against Vietnam and the U.S. war of aggression to recolonize Iraq. And who does all the dying? It's poor whites, it's African Americans, it's Latinos, it's Native Americans, it's Hawaiians, it's Chicanos. So who's going to do the dying in Haiti? The everyday Haitian people and these poor saps from Kenya that couldn't even locate Haiti on a map. I guarantee you 99.9% of these invaders couldn't tell you what the language is of Haiti. So Haiti is cursed. It's cursed by imperialism. It's cursed by white supremacy. It's cursed by colonialism. And we're going to keep fighting for Haiti. We're going to keep educating for Haiti. We're going to do everything we can to stand up to this occupation. But that requires popular education, many more shows like this. So I think this is a good start. I know you all, Revolutionary Blackout Network, has been working with Midwestern Marks for a long while. I'm one of the newest additions to Midwestern Marks, so we're going to be making calls in the anti-war movement, in the anti-imperialist movement. The National People's Conference on Palestine in Detroit, which just ended yesterday, integrated Haiti into all the work that they're doing with the People's Forum. So again, it's a moment of necessary unity. We can't be divided because our enemy is not divided. And it's the greatest purveyor of violence, as Dr. King taught us, 2 generations ago. And that continues to be accurate. So it calls for maximum, to finish with a quote from President Nicolas Maduro, not just the Venezuelan president, but the Bolivarian president, the country most under attack in the Western Hemisphere, arguably right there, shoulder to shoulder with Haiti. Everyone should check out when Hugo Chavez went to the streets of Port-au-Prince and stood with the Haitian people in the Petro-Caribbean project, when Venezuela sent billions and billions of dollars in petrol and oil solidarity to the Haitian people. So Nicolas Maduro has a slogan where he says, right now we need maximum consciousness, we need maximum mobilization, we need maximum unity. And I think from Palestine to Haiti, occupation is a crime. From the South Bronx to Dearborn, colonialism is a crime. So for everyone watching out there, keep fighting, keep talking about Palestine, keep reading about Haiti. The future belongs to those who prepare for it today. In the words of Malcolm X, and we are the vast, vast, vast majority of the world. I mean, it's like 94% of the world's people who stands with Palestine and stands with Haiti. The problem is so many of us here in the belly of the beast are high and drunk off of CNN and Fox and BBC. And that's why we have such a important historical responsibility. So I look forward to future collaborations with the RBN family, and thanks so much for all y'all are doing.
Yeah, man, it was an honor to have you on, man. I found everything you said to be extremely insightful, packed with a lot of information and history and material analysis, and exactly the kind of people that I could talk with all day. So I actually had to cut a bit, and we still went a little bit longer than I had planned. So trust me, it's an honor to be in community with you. Definitely will have you back on, and I appreciate your contribution to this conversation. Thank you for joining us, Danny. Because on Friday we also gonna have your brother from Midwestern Mars, Eddie Liger on. So I'm looking forward to having Eddie back on the channel. And this is the new era of RBN. You guys saw my conversation with DD Geopolitics. So I'm actually in conversation right now. I'm trying to set up a roundtable with DD Geopolitics and their network. And I think this is a very exciting time because when we started RBN, we started because there wasn't like any networks of anti-imperialists. I see DD Geopolitics, I see Midwestern Market, I see all these organizations that prop up that seem legitimate and challenging power. And I'm like, all right, we need to learn from each other, be in coalition with each other. And once again, being in solidarity, as we mentioned and we both agree, is part of correcting each other as well. Make sure our movement is stronger. And I'm all for that, especially considering the time we inside. Legitimately thankful for your input. We have Eddie that's scheduled to come on Friday. Also, we also have Garland Nixon join Sabby and JB on the Sabby and JB show on Thursday. And I also have another guest on Thursday as well. I don't want to. I'm blanking. Either way, the point is, you guys already know RBN. We got banger after banger. Dan, I'll put you in the back. Thank you for joining us once again. Make sure you guys follow.
Shout out
Midwest
to Garland. Shout out to Eddie. I was just with Eddie. You know, Eddie's amazing. He's like the U.S. Soviet athlete of our times, and good luck to him with all the Olympic wrestling. Me and Garland Nixon go way back. You know, he's a close friend and comrade. So super proud of all the work y'all doing. Stay strong. All power to the people.
Yeah, same way. I'll put you in the back. Thank you, Danny, for everything. So we have a lot of great guests lined up. Remember, the Sabby and JV show will be back this Thursday, and they have a banger guest. They have our friend Garland Nixon that will be joining us. Also, we'll have Eddie from Midwestern Marks that will be joining me on Friday. I'm very excited for this new era of RBN. Have a roundtable I'm planning with playing as well. Another Palestinian roundtable with Palestinian activists. They're coming on here very soon. I had to reschedule that. Those Palestinian roundtables are hard to schedule because we got to protect their identities. That's why the last panel I did, you saw a lot of them was they didn't have their camera on, and that's what we had to do with these things because these Palestinians, they get retaliated against. So you guys already know banger after banger after banger. Thank you guys for watching. We got a lot of great things coming up next. So I have the Patreon. We have my Venmo, the merch store. Those are great ways to support our channels. We got a lot of great things going on in the new era of RBN. Thank you guys. Take care. Have a good one.